I don't like to give the customer what they ordered.
I want to take you on a journey diving deep into the world of analog sound creation. This is a story about creativity and integrity. And for this, there is no better guide than Mattias.
The whole idea is that you amplify what's there and nudge it in a different direction.
I met Mattias by total serendipity because I was asked by a client to film his super rare Stocktronics RX 4000 plate reverb. I visited the studio when location scouting and we started talking. And then we didn't stop talking for about 2 hours. So we're here at Mattias' studio and it's just so much stuff everywhere. And the feeling I get when entering this room is what I want to bring into this film that we're making. My name is Danehav and I'm on a mission to make 100 films about 100 humans who are making the planet better. This is a huge project that I'm on and your support is so important. So if you want to help out, if you want to support the channel, please click the subscribe button right now. Here goes film number 99, Mattias, let's do this.
I was born in Hong Kong in 1975 by Swedish parents and then moved to Sweden in 1981. For me, being born in Hong Kong, super blonde and super Swedish in an Asian country, starting off with having that as my normal, and then coming to Sweden, realizing that anything can be everything or the other way around.
He's played in many bands, of which the most famous one is Pine Forest Crunch, who had a hit back in 1996 with Cup Noodle Song.
Pine Forest Crunch, vad är det för ett namn?
Oj, en glassmak, en amerikansk
En glass?
Ja, en amerikansk glassmak.
I think the creativity came from the limitations we had. We didn't have like massive amounts of gear.
Let me open the window.
The best music that is made right now is probably being made on a crappy computer with some garage band thingy. Because it's not really about that.
Mattias has so many stories and we share the same views on things like creativity and the importance of always staying curious. And while this could be a film about old guys using old sound devices for other old guys to watch, I think there is a bigger picture here. So we met him at the studio to find out more. And it goes something like this.
Welcome, come on in.
This is a story about creativity and integrity. No matter if you make music, animate cartoons or paint with acrylic paint.
Hello, I'm Mattias Olsson and welcome to the Roth Händle Studios. The first band that I really felt connected to or felt that this is so strange. Good band for that was Duran Duran. Completely bananas with the hair and the pink suits and everything. So in the 80s, in a different way, you picked your band. And I don't know if Duran Duran was like the band that I should have picked, but it was the one I chose. And I was always angry when they did like a fade out, because it felt like they robbed you of the punchline.
The history of music recording began with the invention of the phonograph in the late 1800s. From wax cylinders to digital recording, technology has always played a significant role in shaping the music industry.
The development of modern electronics made it possible to recreate music from its component parts.
Today, computers, software and plugins that are mimicking the old analog toys make it possible for anyone to create professional quality recordings from home. But a few brave souls hang on to the analog ways, because the randomness of it creates interesting results.
Det där var inte air traffic controller-skivan. Det ser vem som helst. Music has always changed depending on the formats. It's always been like that. And now we're in an era of like the whole TikTok and the whole Reels thing, where you can't have an intro on a song because you have to you've only got, 2 minutes, where you have to come to the punchline immediately. There's no build-up, there's nothing. which is just like a different way of telling a story. It's not better or worse, it's just a different way of doing it. I started in a progressive rock band where people were wearing fucking capes on stage, and it's 17 parts in a song and there's a quest. It's just a different thing, right?
This is the quirkiest.
You're in the wrong key.
I love music. It has always played a major part of my life, from having cassette tapes and recording songs off the radio in the late 80s, to molesting my dad's vinyl records, to collecting CDs and eventually replace everything with Spotify until I started collecting my own vinyls. My tastes have changed and evolved during all these years, but music is still part of my DNA, and I think that is why this story is so important to me. But how did this whole thing start for Mattias?
The first time I discovered sound or realized the effect that it had was in Hong Kong, where we had a very old Chinese man who sold ice cream. And he would ride his bike around to the different apartment buildings, and he had a little glockenspiel, and he'd play a little melody, and all the children would run down and buy ice cream. And if you bought enough ice cream, he would let you play his glockenspiel for a short time. That was the first time I realized or connected a sound with a very positive memory. So for me it was glockenspiel, ice cream, good, which meant that it went the other way as well. So I connected a good feeling with the glockenspiel. So I think that was the first time I realized like how sound was connected to emotions.
While we were at the studio, I wanted to give Mattias a challenge.
What we're going to do is create a very simple and stupid rhythm just by gating and working with random sounds. And what I do is that I find two sound sources, and now I've sort of cheated, but what we're using as the bass drum, it's a practice record of air traffic control clearances. Men det roligaste jag har, det här är ju air traffic controller clears. Jag har ju ettan också.
Of course you do.
Develop speed and understanding of IFR clearances. This is what the album sounds like. When they're calling out what flights are heading into the airport. This is our bass drum. But this record player is kind of different because this is a record player that the Library of Congress made for blind people. And what they did was that they made it so that it would go at very low speeds. And then you get this bass drum. And then I'm using just white noise from the modular system, which is all frequencies playing at once, which sounds like, which is perfect for building a snare drum. So you've got our bass drum. And a snare drum.
So right now Mattias is trying to figure out what kind of sound he's gonna construct for us. And while doing this, he is constructing the sound for us, just like we want. So it's just an incredible experience to be in this room, seeing how he's connecting cables and just changing the slightest little bit in the sound and making magic. The reason I found Mattias in the first place was that Soundtoys asked me to film his plate reverb that is so rare that it only exists here in Sweden. And from that they moved on to decide to help me make this film by sponsoring it. Soundtoys is an audio effects creator, and they manically collect analog gear, maybe even more than Mattias. And that is one of the reasons why their plugins sound so good. They have meticulously studied all of their analog gear and managed to merge all the color, the character and the quirks with new features that aren't even possible in the original hardware units. So when it comes to choosing between analog and digital, Soundtoys might just be the best of both worlds. So if you want to do what Mattias is doing, but on a computer in your home, without collecting all of this crazy stuff, you should check out Soundtoys. They have provided me with a limited time offer for you All the details are in the description. And now back to the film.
When I'm asked to produce things and someone plays me a song, my immediate reaction to that is, how is this supposed to feel when the song has ended? What do you want to leave to the listener? If I don't know that, when I start recording, I won't record. I don't do anything as a kind of, well, we'll start and see and then we'll figure it out. Because I can't do that, because there's like far too many options. When that last note hits, I have to know what emotion I want to leave to the listener. If I don't know that when I start, I won't start at all. There's no use. You have to know what you're aiming for.
My name is Henrik Andersson. I'm here at the Roth Händle and working with Mattias. We are working on one of my songs, and we are trying to make an intro to a song we already made. So we'll see how that works out.
What you do is that you curate the recording. A lot of the times you can have an artist come in and say, well, I want the guitar sound on this album. And then I'll go, well, I'll listen to it. Or I go like, well, it's probably going to be like, it's going to be that guitar and it's going to be this pedal and it goes out through that amplifier with this microphone. That's probably how they did it. Okay, but they've already done that. Why would you want to replicate that? Wouldn't it be more fun? Instead, we would use that guitar going through that pedal into that amplifier, and we're going to use this microphone. What happens then is that your creativity awakens. It goes like, well, if we can do that, couldn't we also do that? And when you get to that point, that's where all the interesting things happen. Because pretty much anyone can learn how to do that and do that. But to like really make people understand what that is, that's a completely different thing.
Well, everything is quirky about Mattias and the studio and all the equipment that's sort of like semi-working. Mattias is really quick to get a vision for where he wants to take things.
If people want to like pull their song through this and out through distortion pedals, and I'm your guy. I don't want to recreate stuff. So I recorded my first album in 1992, which makes me 17. And I started playing drums when I was 8. So that means that I've been playing now for, 40 years, which is crazy. I had this idea when I was younger. I was going to be this amazing like session drummer. That was going to be my life. But I was already curious about the whole idea of recording. This very fragile and delicate art that, well, you can turn this knob up to 6, but you don't turn it up to 7 because that's horrible. Everybody said that, like, you can't do that. You're like, what? 5 is a bit too, like, that's just a bit too, it's not quite there. 6 is perfect, never 7. So, recorded a couple of albums with my first band, and then I had my second band, and we got a bit of money, and we got to record in bigger studios with bigger knobs and bigger 5, 6, 7s. And I kept on asking, what is this? Why can't we do it like that? Why not 7? Right? Why can't we do 7? And it's like, no, you never do 7. And it's like, but why is 7 there? Oh, I will show you the secret. Come. And we could do like the whole Obi-Wan Kenobi thing. And that was always great. And I'd make notes. Never 7. Never 7.
Jag tror att det är väldigt många bra band som sitter i sina replokaler och väntar på att stora skivbolagsdirektören ska åka förbi med limousinen med feta skivkontrakt och någon påse pengar och säger, ni är ju jättebra. Tyvärr händer inte det allt för ofta.
Det har jag aldrig prövat, så hoppas det funkar. We were recording at EMI Studios, and we were working with an old analog synth, a Minimoog. And this was like late 90s. And we were recording it, and what you do is that you've got your synthesizer, and you have a cable that runs from the synthesizer into the big recording console. And you go, and it goes like, oh, that was kind of good, but we want it to be slightly wee, and go, all right, that's kind of good. And you would be paying like 10,000 kronor a day. And the only thing that you were using was the synthesizer and the cable that went into there. What would happen if we owned the synthesizer, recorded that at home, and then we'd record there as many times as we want? We would have like spend time at home on all the little fiddly bits and do all the big stuff in the big studios.
Ooh, I got a big box, how about you?
Drums, or if we were going to play live together, or strings, or horn sections, or like that bagpipe orchestra that you always need for every recording. Wonderful! 10 out of 10. So it started out like as an economic thing, because a mini Moog at the time cost like 8,000 kroner. For one day in the studio, we could buy one of these mini Moogs and have it forever. So that's like how it started in a way.
I think a big building block of working as a creative person is to collect interesting stuff, myself included. So of course I had to ask Mattias, what's the weirdest, greatest instrument he's got lying around here?
It was a church out in a Stockholm suburb. And they got in touch with me in a very weird fashion. They called me up late at night, and I heard like a very faint female voice. The voice of an old woman who said, "I heard that you're a collector of large instruments." And I said, "Well, I don't know who's been saying this about me, but continue." And she said, "Because we're getting rid of our pipe organ. Would you be interested?" Now I was 35. And my reasoning was, I've only been asked once this question in 35 years, which means that logically the next time will be when I'm 70, and I can't wait that long. So I said, "Yes, I want your pipe organ. Where is it? And how much do you want for it?" And they were like, no, we'll donate it to you. You'll get it for free. It's in a storage facility outside of Stockholm. And I was thinking, this is how it all ends. So I borrowed my mother's car, and then I had like tape, and I started marking all the pipes in it, because I thought it was going to be like 70 or 80 pipes. Row number A, A1, A2. At the end, I realized that there was like 280 pipes in it. So yeah, that was interesting. And then I had to just find a moving company who could bring it in. And then we had to get like a crane that took it over the roof, and then they carried it in. And then I have a guy who comes and tunes it. Now it's slightly out of tune.
This ginormous pipe organ is just the tip of the iceberg. It made me realize that there is a story behind every single piece.
An old band member had a mellotron, and he called me up on a Friday afternoon and said, "Hey Mattias, I have a mellotron. I need a new Volvo. Do you want to buy my mellotron?" And I was like, "Yeah, well, how much do you want for it?" "Well, the ad is going to be running in the paper on Sunday. If you're not here on Saturday," and it was like Friday afternoon, "there are no banks open. How are we going to do this?" And we figured it out. So I still have the mellotron, and I don't think he has the Volvo still. So win for me.
How did this energy to create ignite in the first place?
Fast forward to when I actually got my own little recording device. It's right over here. And it was like, and it's like this very simple, small Akai 12-channel recorder. You could just like put in a cable there, you press this button, and then you could go like, and then you had recorded. And then I opened up another channel, and I went, and then I had 2 channels. I can do this. And the first thing I did was to pull everything up to 7, just to check what would happen if you went up to 7. And then one time I even went up to 8. This whole idea that I could do whatever I wanted and record whatever I wanted, that was like the start of this like avalanche of creativity, of just like exploring things, trying to figure out, okay, because I saw how like the grown-ups recorded, and now I felt like, well, okay, so I've seen that, now I'm going to try to figure this out by myself. And so I had a mellotron, and I had a Magnus organ, and I had drums and percussion and stuff, and then I started exploring from there. And it was a complete rush. And then a friend of mine, his old band had completely like imploded as bands do. And he's like, well, Mattias, you got one of those recording machines. I said, yes, I do. I wrote a song. And okay. And he played me the song, and it was really, really good. And he was like, can't you record it? And I said, oh yes, I can. And then we started recording.
You get a lot of interesting results. Sometimes you just have to let him do his thing and then say that, you know what, sorry, that's not it. That's not it. We'll have to start over. But it's creative and fun.
Before I knew it, I was like constantly recording and recorded at home. Now we are in the 5th version of my studio, if I count the apartment as being number 1. Like the bathroom was like the echo chamber, and we'd record loops into the answering machine, and we'd be running wires, everything in the entire apartment, and we're just like having loads of fun, because the whole idea of it was, what if? What can we do? And then after a while, there was one incident when my wife, then girlfriend, walked out into the living room naked, and there was an entire band sitting in the couch. And she said that, well, something has to go. And so then I got my first little room. And when I had this little 30 square meters room, that meant that I could get more stuff. Hello and welcome to Roth Händle 5. This is the 5th version, the wonderful new studio. As you can hear, there's a bit of acoustics going on, but it won't be like that for long. I think the creativity came from the limitations we had. We didn't have like massive amounts of gear. So it was like, okay, we want to have a okay, we don't have anything that does He goes, no, I have a Nokia phone. Okay, so new ring signal, save, play. Okay, we've got a synthesizer, great. What else have we got? We want to have this, which we don't have. Okay, how can we sort of get to that with whatever crap we've got lying around? So you got your bicycle wheel. So you can like insert any kind of like, what key is it in? And this is exactly the kind of stuff that I should be doing, because it's so much fun and it's actually really beautiful. Studio tour, all right, cool.
Show me the cool stuff.
Oh, the coolest stuff. All right, we could start off actually with the first keyboard that I bought, which is that little Magnus organ, which is a little like pump air organ. This here is a diamond saw blade that I like found on the street, because there's a company who makes them down there. It's like a very, very large gong or cymbal. When you close mic it, it has this amazing bass, which is great for like soundtracky stuff, for, I don't know, sound therapy or whatever. If you count every individual drum and everything, it's probably over 1,000, right? I got like 30 electric guitars from a guitar store in like one swoop, because they were kind of beat up. Do you want guitars? Yeah, sure. And they gave me like 32 guitars.
Filming in this studio was the filmmaker's version of a first world problem. It's an overwhelming visual paradise, just an unlimited number of angles, artifacts, moving parts and beautiful instruments that choosing what to focus on becomes an actual issue. So let's focus on Mattias instead. Does everything always turn out the way you picture in your head?
Behind every horrible, bad idea, there's usually a pretty good one. If you allow yourself to do that really horrible, bad idea, if you can get rid of like the music police in your head and just do stuff. Creating music and art with your best friends, and then by the end of the day, you like press the green button, you pull that up, and you can hear it through speakers. It's very, very simple and extremely complicated at the same time, but it comes down to that. You press that and then you hear something. And some days it's something really wonderful and it's something really beautiful. And other days you kind of go, oh, looks like we have to come back tomorrow and do it again. Well, this isn't, this isn't for human consumption.
Den här är väldigt, väldigt grym också. Det här är då Don Baker at the console of the Rogers electronic organ. The sound of 94 speakers. Ja, det är ju grymt. Om det inte var för en liten grej. Inspelat i mono. Det gör ingen jävla skillnad hur många högtalare ni har. Vad sägs om ni bara håller snattran? 94 högtalare och en mick liksom, tack. Det blir ingen skillnad.
I had to live through that whole kind of thing, going from recording on tape machines to recording on computers. What I felt was like the biggest difference. If you're working on 24 channels, you had to make a decision. You had to like figure out what you were going to do. There was no undo, there was no like redo. You're not in control. If you have like a set agenda, you have to like, there might be issues. You might not end up where you were planning on going, but it's going to be a fun trip getting there. With this drum machine, the only thing that I'm doing actually is that I'm turning off and on the sound. So I'm opening the sound. And then you get the rhythm that I programmed is something like this. And then that is going through this filter in the modular system, so I get... The filter is opening and closing. Can make the bass drum a bit shorter. So we've got a air traffic controller being the bass drum, we've got white noise being the snare drum. That's going through the filter, and then it's going out through reverb in the modular system as well. And what we're actually doing is that we're just like cutting up these random sound sources into a rhythm. And you can obviously play this on a drum kit. But, I mean, anyone can do that.
Yeah, sure.
As long as you play sounds in a rhythmic fashion, the listener will view them as like the bass drum or the snare drum, even if it goes boom. Even if it is an air traffic controller played on a blind gramophone player, this is now our bass drum. It's like that deal you make with the listener. So that is what I did today. What we've got here is something fairly special. This is a mellotron that I bought from South Africa, which was used by BBC. And what they did was that they had all the sound effects that they needed for their TV shows on tape. They'd have a lion roar here, and they would have maybe someone running down a street here, because it really is all the sounds that you think you'd find on a South African effects tape. So it's lion roars, it's someone throwing something heavy into the water, and there's also a car crash. I think that their TV is far more exciting than ours. Something that got lost when everyone started recording on computers was the aspect of watching music. You could record a castanet take, clickety-clock, clickety-clock. And then you go into the control room and you'd ask the engineer or the producer and go like, is it in time? Was it good? And they would usually say, let me check. And they would take the mousey thing and they would scroll back and they would look at the grid and they'd go like, yeah, it looks good. And you go like, well, shouldn't we be listening to it? What, weren't you listening? The idea of visualizing music instead of listening to it was like a big change. To this day, people are like stuck on that whole idea of a grid. Put the music in these little boxes and they're like that, and you stack them up, and then I like these two boxes and I'll copy them and I'll put them over here and all of that. All the options that people have is, I think it's amazing what it has done, which is it's so much more democratic. You don't have to have like a big studio and a very old man who will tell you what you can or can't do. everyone who has a computer has like GarageBand. So you can go like, my boyfriend has left me, and then you can do a song from that. I've heard that song. The best music that is made right now is probably being made on a crappy computer with like cracked plugins, because it's not really about that. There is a misconception that because I have all of this wonderful tubey analog gear that I'm like opposed to digital as such. I happen to have these colors to paint with, so they are the ones that I use. They're not better or worse than anything that's on a computer, but it's the colors that I'm comfortable with. When I've figured this out and know how it all works, which I still haven't, it isn't impossible that I will be sitting with an iPad and GarageBand and go, my girlfriend has left me, and I will be doing that. I'm recording on a digital device, but I'm using it exactly as a tape recorder. And the thing is that I believe that if I would do like a blind test, is this a real plate reverb or is it an emulation, I would probably fail, like miserably.
With all the development that's been done in digital music production, I wanted to hear Mattias' unique perspective on this. Does he think it's good or bad or somewhere in between?
The biggest difference is that you have the interaction with the instrument or the actual piece. Some days it might work and some days it won't. You're starting to have like a conversation both with yourself and the instrument or object. Okay, I was headed in this direction. We're apparently not going there today, but we ended up here instead, which is like completely unplanned, but probably more interesting, having an openness and being reactive to what you're hearing. Because a lot of times, like the artifacts in these old instruments can be like more interesting than the actual thing. It gives me a good like kick in the creative nuts when you kind of go like, oh, okay. And then you've got like the little pictures of, oh, this is where we're going to end up. And then you have like this weird toy instrument, and then you've got this like boutique distortion pedal, and then you get and in the end, if you're really, really lucky, you can do that at the end of the day, and you press, and you go, this is amazing. I didn't know that we were going to do this today. When you work in a digital and a computer domain, you turn it on and it works, and it sounds probably wonderful. A lot of these keyboards or pieces of equipment are really wonderful, but they're fairly unreliable. Sound different every time, but they're wonderful and they're fun and they've got character. So they're great to hang out with, but you wouldn't necessarily lend them money. That's like the thing. The bird song played on a blind gramophone, and then you just put it through a analog delay. This is the voice of the guy presenting the birds in between. It's really nice. If you want to dive into like the whole analog world and start exploring, I would say that if you don't have any money, because I didn't really have any money when I started out, one of the coolest things, if you have the space for it, you get one of those old home organs, because they usually have like a drum machine, they're polyphonic, and they've got bass pedals. And people are giving them away for nothing. People have given me organs for free because they were clashing with the wallpaper. Like, okay, if you've got a drum machine, you've got bass pedals, and you've got a polyphonic organ with a couple of different sounds. If you get a cheap distortion pedal and cheap echo pedal, that means that you've got a krautrock factory right there. You can do like anything on that. The really magical thing about all of these instruments, or like an organ like that, is its limitations. No, it won't sound like Vangelis, or it won't sound like the Blade Runner soundtrack, but it will sound like this really unique thing. The limitations and the hurdles of working with like physical objects forces you to think differently. I think it forces you to approach it in different way. You can't really be comfortable. You can't be lazy when you work with it, because you'll turn this on and then you realize that the battery is dead, or there's something else wrong, which means that you have to really want to do it, right? If you don't want to do it, it's not going to happen, and it won't connect itself.
Okay, wow. Time to sum this up. Mattias' work is all about music and sounds. What I learned and will take with me when creating films is that I can view the different components in a film production as Mattias views the instruments, as friends that I have a conversation with, and together we will reach the goal. So have a clear goal and then let go of control and let the creativity do its thing, and you will end up with magic.
I don't really feel that music can break, you know, anything can be everything, or the other way around. If people want to like pull their song through this and that, through distortion pedals, and I'm your guy, and I'm curious to hear what that's gonna sound like. I don't want to recreate stuff. Clickety-clock, clickety-clock.
Ni tyckte inte att det var bra? Jag tycker att det är helt okej. Varför är inte den här pedalen stel?
Vad sa du?
Varför är inte den här pedalen stel?
Ja, det är en bra fråga. Men det är väl för att man ska göra det 2 gånger.
För att man ska köpa 2.